Hey, welcome in.
Welcome to the Arrowhead Addict podcast.
We are here coming to you live.
The Kansas City Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl. You only win a Super Bowl 2 times every 5 years, right?
Oh!
The warm-up act is over. Let's bring in Melissa Etheridge, massive Chiefs fan. Melissa,
Super Bowl champion, two-time Pro Bowler, and Trent Green. Trent Green, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
and he picked it up! He picked it up! He's gonna score! And we'll see you next week. But until then, as always, go Chiefs.
Welcome into the Arrowhead Addict podcast. I am Sterling Holmes, joined by Daniel Harms of RGR Football, and quite frankly, a plethora of other things. You can follow him on the X at InHarmsWay19. Does a phenomenal job right there on Twitter, breaking down bite-sized clips for your enjoyment. So I found Harms, and now hopefully that's how you enjoy Harms. Daniel, how are you?
Oh, we're alive. I think that's the big thing right now, right? Like, if you guys know me, if you follow me, you know last week was rough and touch and go for me. But right now, it's Tuesday of the week after. I'm doing good, and we have now actual things to talk about with the schedule release little by little until tomorrow when it all drops in. So I'm excited to see how this plays out. We have very interesting, very fun start to the season that we know about. So I'm getting back into content creation mode. Like, I've got a Chamari Connor film breakdown for tomorrow. Like, it's all flowing, and we're doing a good job over here, having fun.
Yeah. Before we get into everything, I do want to point out to everyone, if you've not downloaded the FanDuel app yet, you'll definitely want to take advantage of this offer. New users who sign up through our link must deposit $10 and place a first wager of $5 on any live bet. If that first bet wins, you'll receive $150 in bonus bets straight into your account. This offer is only available if you sign up through our link, bit.ly/arrow150. You can find that link in the description below our stream, as well as scan the QR code on screen to start signing up. Again, the link is bit.ly/arrow150. This offer will end shortly, so make sure you don't miss out. Offer is only available to new customers who are 21 plus and physically present in legal gambling states. Please remember to always gamble responsibly, and check the episode description for the full terms of the offer, as well as the link to see if you qualify. All right, now, Harms, I figured we just pick a side and we can talk about Harrison Butker. I figured that's going to be the whole show. You get one side, I get the other, and we just have a free-for-all. No, surprisingly, we're not going to do that. What we're going to do is talk about the Ravens-Chiefs opener. That was announced by the NFL. We also know Game 2 is going to be Chiefs-Bengals, also at home at Arrowhead. We'll get into the second game in a moment. Let's start with the first one here. You know, I don't know your thoughts when it originally was announced that it was going to be Baltimore. Was not really on my radar. Quite frankly, I thought, maybe they'll do the Bengals first because Joe Burrow can never finish a season. So why have it later on in the year when he's probably not going to be there? Yeah. And let's be real now, the Bengals probably won't be in contention at the end of this year to begin with. So that's neither here nor there. We can get to that in a moment. But with the Ravens, I go, it makes sense. The NFL is trying to start another rivalry. The Ravens are actually good. They're still good. The Bills probably taking a step back. Bengals probably taking a step back. So with the Ravens, they go, well, they had a nice playoff matchup. The Ravens have a great team. They should still be here. We all know if the Ravens win week 1, what it's going to be like. The Chiefs dynasty is failing. Ravens have Mahomes and the Chiefs number. Is this the Ravens start to their next Super Bowl run? And then we all know what's going to happen. The Ravens are going to lose round 1 in the playoffs, while the Chiefs will be hoisting the third Lombardi in a row. But for the NFL, they want that storyline. It's good for business. The Chiefs had the same thing with the Patriots back in the day. The issue was the Chiefs were in the Ravens' shoes, and the Patriots, they were the Chiefs' shoes. But when you heard that the first game of the year was the Baltimore Ravens traveling to Arrowhead, what were your thoughts?
So I think, just to start here, as just a little aside, you guys have all seen The Babadook, right? There's a scene in The Babadook, this horror movie, where the mom turns around to his son and like, why can't you just be normal? It feels like every offseason, that is the Chiefs. Like, why can't you guys just be normal and not have so many talking points? I would love for that to happen one of these off seasons. But to get to the Baltimore Ravens, I think this makes a ton of sense. One, because it's going to get tons of views. And also, at least for the Chiefs perspective, Patrick Mahomes has lost once to Lamar Jackson in his career. I believe that's it. There was that one Monday night or Sunday night game that they played where it was that moment where everyone's like, well, John Harbaugh put the ball in Lamar Jackson's hands. We have that close-up clip of him saying, what do you want to do? You want to go for it? Let's go for it. Like, that's what stuck in my head that one time, and everyone was like, hey, and then just, Patrick Mahomes does what Patrick Mahomes does, and we see them beat them in the postseason. So this is, for me, the kind of what everyone expects, right? They expect the Ravens to be one of the best teams, if not maybe the second best team with Patrick Mahomes. That's kind of how the NFL sees this in my eyes, because the Bills looks like they're doing their little soft reload, right? Like the Chiefs did a couple years ago. That's what they're trying to emulate. The Bengals last year, obviously Burrow got hurt. They had a down year. Their defense wasn't very good last year. It's trying to get better. Their offensive line, they still got some problems there. They're trying to figure out what's happening there. But, they expect them to be all right. You expect them to be pretty good. Everyone expects the Ravens to be, like you said, very, very good. So when I saw that they were starting the season off against the Ravens, it's like, yeah, that's blockbuster type of football that I love to start a season off with. And I like seeing it from both perspectives, early in the season and late in the season, which we're going to get as Chiefs fans and people who watch them and cover them on a regular basis. We're going to get some of that with the start and with the end. So it's always nice to see them playing really good teams. I know people are like worried about, I would hate to have such an important AFC game early in the season, but let's be honest. What did the Chiefs do late in the season? They win football games. So for me, it's not so much a worry. It's more about seeing where they're at right now.
Yeah, and I see this from Brands, and this is one of my concerns, kind of with the same storyline you're going with here. The NFL might front load the Chiefs' schedule. And I don't know if the NFL is doing this on purpose. I don't think there's some conspiracy here. I really don't. But I find it interesting that if Rashee Rice is going to miss games, I think the thought process is it'll probably start week 1. Now, we don't know if it's going to be levied, the suspension, but I think at a minimum, we'll see him at least on the NFL commissioner's exempt list. And if that's the case, it might be back pay, right? Where it's like, okay, you're suspended 8 weeks, but you have sat out on the commissioner's exempt list for 6 weeks. You only have to serve 2 more weeks. That could be a realistic possibility here. Now, I don't think the NFL is necessarily trying to front load the Chiefs' schedule so Rashee Rice isn't there. But from the Chiefs' perspective, that's not ideal, especially as we'll get into wide receivers later on. A lot of new faces there that a lot of times takes times for the guys to gel. I'm not nervous because I do think, Andy Reid is just phenomenal off of a bye. Well, what's better than a 30-week-long bye plus 10 days before you face the Bengals? It's not like Joe Burrow and the Bengals have, quite frankly, lit it up early in seasons. They really haven't. They've actually been a team that have struggled out of the gates. It's just a lot of importance when I firmly believe the Chiefs are a team that typically gets better as the season goes on. When it comes to the Ravens, they are the second best team in the AFC, the third best team in the AFC. And the reason why I'm concerned, and I don't think I'm not saying the Chiefs don't have a chance here, but it's going to be playoff positioning between the Chiefs, Texans, and Ravens, I think, all year long. I just don't like that happening in week 1. But again, you're going to have to play the Ravens at some point, right? You're going to have to play them, whether it's first game or week 17. You're going to have to play them. Just if I had my druthers, I wished it was going to be later on in the season. Part of my surprise was the past 2 years. You try and find patterns with the NFL of how the schedule release is actually going to happen because we're impatient people. I don't want to wait. I want to try and figure out who it's going to be. So the past 2 had been NFC opponents, right? With the Lions being last year. So my thought was, okay, well, if that's the case, what if they go with the Buccaneers, right? The Mahomes, Baker Mayfield college combination, the Super Bowl combination. Didn't happen. And then you thought the up-and-coming Texans, a la the ilk of the Detroit Lions last year. That didn't happen. So then you're left with the Ravens, who, again, I think the most complete roster in the AFC. Them, the Chiefs, and the Texans. I don't know how you're going to break it down 1, 2, 3, but they're right there. Do you like having such an important game week 1?
Yes, I personally, I do. You're gonna have to play him anyway at some point, and I know the Chiefs get better, but this is a good litmus test, right? It's always a good litmus test. I think them playing the Lions was a good one. I know it wasn't AFC driven, but it was seeing where you're at. And obviously, there's a lot that happened in Week 1 last season that kind of showed exactly what the Chiefs were going to be until they figured it out. So at least early on, it's an area where you can get a good measuring stick. And by week 7, week 8, week 9, I don't think it's going to be that much of a deal. Say the Chiefs lose this game to the Ravens, it's still going to come down to who has the best record. And I think that the Ravens play in a tougher division.
Oh, yes.
You can argue it's a much tougher division. So while I understand the concern for that, we also just watched the Chiefs go on, 4+ game winning streak in the postseason, not necessarily having to play that game. That extra game in the wild card is always a blessing, but it's always a worry for a lot of teams having to go on the road. They went on the road to Baltimore. They went on the road, to Buffalo, won those football games. So at least we have perspective, right? That it doesn't matter as much for this specific team led by Patrick Mahomes that it would be in the past, or for some other teams to have that home field advantage.
That's a very good point. Yeah, Adam Teicher actually brought that up today, where it's like we had him on the radio show today, and he basically was saying along the lines of, does it really matter because the Chiefs have proven they can win on the road? Teams like the Ravens can't even prove they can win at home. That's what it comes down to. I like this from Rob Miller here in the comments. This is a blessing. A mini bye between week 1 and week 2. So I'm taking KC 2-0. That's actually an interesting point here. Well, again, you can make the case that you're playing two great teams, two teams with playoff implications early in the season. That is nice. You have a 10-day window in between the Ravens and then the Bengals. Yeah. If you're the Chiefs and Andy Reid, now that's a little intriguing. Now, this is a positive, in my opinion, for Kansas City playing the Bengals week 2. Again, playoff implications, yes, but the Chiefs should have an advantage with 10 days to rest up, which most likely is going to be the Bengals with just a normal week.
Yeah, and I'm actually taking this from the defensive side because Spags doesn't like to really get his big game plans out there until halfway through the season. We see that. But even such, it's two really good quarterbacks. So he's going to have to give him a little bit more than they want to early on in the season. And like you said, coming off of the 30 weeks from winning the Super Bowl to playing in week 1, you'll get to game plan for Lamar Jackson a little bit more than you might have originally during the season. And then 10 days for Joe Burrow, who, again, they've done a good job of showcasing that Joe Burrow can move a little bit. He can adjust his offense. The offense last couple of years has kind of adapted a little bit, not to just being the team that beat them, in the AFC Championship game, just bombs away, right? Just throwing the ball down the field a ton. That team has kind of changed. They've run the ball a bit better, specifically out of shotgun, and they've changed how they get the ball out in different ways to different receivers in shorter to intermediate and deep areas. So that is going to challenge the Chiefs defense, obviously now without L'Jarius Sneed. So having that extra time for Steve Spagnuolo, I think, is even more important than, say, Andy Reid coming off a bye for their offense.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point there. Like this from Quentin Lovett, appreciates you. Says, nice to see Dan with Sterling, and Sterling's hair is mid-season
always
fresh.
That is 100% all year round, guys.
It's
that's
all
just
year, baby. It's all year, baby. Got to take pride in something, something to take pride in. If I ever lose it, I'm going to be a very ugly bald man. I mean, I would just look horrible. All I can grow is a mustache. It's not going to look pretty. My head is shaped like an alien. We're not going to hopefully have to deal with that one right there. And the Bengals, again, are a team that typically has not started off strong. Even last year when Joe Burrow was healthy, he was throwing pick after pick early on. There's all this talk with T. Higgins and Trey Hendrickson, and they want to be traded or extensions more than likely. But now, of course, since they're not going to get them with Cincinnati, because we know how their ownership works and how they're a little on the cheaper side, right? They're most likely going to be unhappy. And do they see Trey Hendrickson and T. Higgins early on in the year pull a Chris Jones? Will they be sitting in a suite in Arrowhead? Will they call the Cats bros and say, hey, what's up, guys? Yeah, that suite that Chris Jones sat in week 1? Yeah, we're going to need that week 2. We're going to be sitting there watching the Chiefs crush the Bengals, so that way hopefully we can get a extension done here. I do think there's something to that, and Joe Burrow, again, will be coming off of an injury. We will see how this happens. We will see how he's able to play. Again, I do think at some point you do have to have the injury-prone conversation with Joe. I know they're very fluky injuries, but at some point, if they keep happening, it's not good. It's at some point, it's the same body, fluke or not. You keep getting injured. So I do think early in the year, I think the Chiefs playing the Bengals week 2 actually behooves Kansas City a good amount.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And I do agree with your point earlier about how they wanted to get this done so that we could get Patrick Mahomes versus Joe Burrow, hopefully. Like, he's been getting hurt, and it's an uncomfortable conversation for Bengals fans. And I understand, like, no one wants to be labeled injury prone. No player wants to be labeled injury prone. If he gets another injury this year, regardless of how long he's out, it will be there. It will be stuck on him for a while. And to no fault of your own, you can't control your own body, how it reacts to the turmoil and the tribulations that is the NFL. And even to an extent, what happens outside of the NFL. Like, you can't control the different things that you get dealt with, the hand that you're dealt. So it's tough for him as a player, because when he's on the field and he's playing, at the peak, he is one of the best quarterbacks in football, and it's just fun to watch and appreciate. So I'm hopeful that we get to watch that in week 2, because I'm a lover of just pure football and I love watching the best go at it. And that's why I'm excited about this 1-2 punch to open the season. I think it's going to be extremely exciting. Excuse me. We might also see the Chiefs throw out some things that we're not used to, because again, we haven't really seen this kind of 1-2 to start the season in a few years. I think it's been, I don't even know if they've had it this tough to start out the gates in their in the last 5 or 6 years with Patrick Mahomes as starting. So,
well, because a lot of times it's the NFC or a game that doesn't have playoff implications. Again, these two teams, again,
or even the Chargers,
the Chargers. I mean, it's still the AFC West, and the thing with the Bengals, again, I'm not trying to be a hater because it's fun for Chiefs and Cincy to go at it. I get all that stuff. I don't think they're going to be a great team this year. I think they'll be fighting for a wild card spot. I firmly believe that it's Houston, Chiefs, and Texans as the clear-cut 3 best teams in the AFC. Drop down a tier, then you probably have the Dolphins, Bengals, the Bills. Drop down a tier, then like the Jets, the Jags, maybe the Colts. You'd be like, I think there's a clear-cut top 3, and that does not include the Bengals. I'm intrigued to see how they bounce back with, again, the spotlight no longer being on them. I do think with the spotlight of the Ravens being week 1, that almost shows them what the NFL thinks, that, okay, that matchup was fun. You had your chance. Now it's time for the Ravens' chance against the Kansas City Chiefs. Question here from Gizmo says, who's the starting cornerback opposite Trent McDuffie?
Man, that's a fun question. No one really knows, right? Like, we can go back to last year and talk about the player that was on the trajectory to start in 3 cornerback sets. Najee Johnson was the talk of training camp, saying he was going to be the guy to start outside with L'Jarius Sneed when Trent McDuffie kicked into the slot. Now he's coming off of a season injury from last year, and we have 3 corners right now that are playing on the outside, like trying to figure that out. And if all goes the same that we expect it to, with Trent McDuffie kicking back on the inside, that means that there are essentially 2 outside cornerback positions open, because you're going to play most of your snaps in nickel, where you have 3 corners on the field. And I'll be honest, that leaves me uncomfortable. Like, I've watched at least 2 of these guys the last couple of years, and I like Jalen Watson to an extent. I like Josh Williams to an extent. I haven't seen Najee Johnson. So if I had to guess right now, I would say in base sets, it would be Trent McDuffie and Josh Williams. I think he's going to have the inside early track, but I don't know, because the Chiefs like to interchange them a ton anyway. So it could just be those 3 guys playing the predominant snaps. But I'm really excited to see what Najee Johnson offers because of that trajectory he had last year. I want to see what he gets on the field.
Yeah, I think that's one of the more intriguing names is Najee Johnson. I'm with you, though. I do think it's going to be maybe even a game-by-game basis between Joshua Williams and Jalen Watson for the majority of the snaps, a smattering of Najee Johnson, and then we'll see what happens with Kamal Hayden as the season progresses. I do see it from about time. Maybe I did mess up. When I said Houston, Chiefs, and Texans, I meant Ravens, Chiefs, and Texans. I don't know if I said Baltimore, but hopefully everyone knew what I meant when I said Ravens, Chiefs, and Texans. So that's on me. Brian Gale says the Bills will not make the playoffs. Look for the Jets to beat out the Bills for the last playoff spot. I think that's close. It's between those two teams. I actually think that Miami, those three teams, they're going to be battling out the AFC East. The Bills are interesting because I still think Josh Allen's the second best quarterback in the NFL, but that team is devoid of talent and weapons right now. Though I will say Dalton Kincaid at tight end is a phenomenal guy to have because he can do a little bit of everything. That guy is very, very talented. Thims, I'm going to butcher that name, so I apologize. They say if we end up hitting on our 6th-round pick, Hayden, I'll call the three-peat. Guy had the best numbers at CB and all the NCAA, and he was in the SEC. Yeah, if you look at some of his numbers, they're phenomenal. Obviously, the injury was a big reason why he fell the way he did. Any thoughts there? If we'll see a lot of Hayden this year, or do you think he's more of a stash?
So that's the interesting part, right? Like last year, I heard reports that both Jalen Watson and Josh Williams were not progressing. They weren't taking the mantle. Like there was a position up for grabs, and you saw Najee Johnson, 7th-round pick, who was projected at safety, come in and essentially take the role. Like that's what he was slated to do. So what happens if we have the same situation this year and there's no one to take up the mantle? I don't have much film on Hayden for whatever reason. Tennessee defense is not abundant out there for anybody, so I haven't got to see a ton of him.
Well, because they're not abundantly good. Watch Mizzou just torch them.
Their offense is everywhere, though. I can get so much Tennessee offense. Why can't I get the opposite side? You're already at the game. Just give me the other side. That's all I'm asking for. But if I had to guess, if he's healthy, I think he can make a play for it because of the talent, the athletic ability, and specifically when you have a nose for the football and you can stay in phase, it gives you a really good shot in this defense because we've seen Charvarius Ward, Josh Williams, Jalen Watson, all with that same archetype on the outside, be actual playing time contributors at cornerback. So he could, again, if he's healthy, he's ready to go, he's picking up the defense, he absolutely could do that and be able to be a contributor earlier than I think I was expecting, again, for a guy who was picked in D3.
Yeah. Matt Jenkins says the Ravens team isn't as good as last year. They lost a ton, just like the Bills. While they did lose, was it 15 players? The majority of them were not their starters. They did lose some bigger names, though. I will say Geno Stone at safety was a big loss for them. Really thought he was an underrated player. I believe he actually went to the Bengals, and that was one of my favorite deals the Bengals made in a very cheap deal. I thought he was going to get paid, and that was actually a good pickup from Cincinnati. So I will grant you that one, Matt, right there. Gizmo asked which tight end is going to the practice squad. Probably Irv Smith. I don't think they carry 4. Maybe they do have 4 on the 53-man, and one is a game day inactive. But I would think it's pretty clear cut that Irv Smith is the tight end 4 in my book. You land on the same page there, Daniel?
I do, but I also think that they want to carry 4 tight ends. I think that they've kind of shown a propensity to carry 4. And when they're healthy, that's what I think ideally what they would have wanted out of Jody Fortson. He would have been the tight end 4 and been contributing, but they haven't been able to do that with injury. So I think ideally 4 make the roster. But at the end of the day, you got to make cuts where you make cuts. I don't think we're going to see 7 wide receivers on this roster like we did last year because Andy Reid said, I tried that one time and it's not happening again.
Yeah, that was not ideal. You know what? Let's do that. Well, I wanted to talk offensive line with you, but I'll push that to after the wide receiver talk. How do you think the wide receiver room looks early in the season? You know, there were those rumblings about the Chiefs trying to bring in Zay Jones, came in for a meeting. He left and signed elsewhere. Not a lot of guys on the market. No Tyler Boyd, no DJ Chark, no Odell Beckham Jr. The list kind of goes on and on. It's getting very, very thin. It shows that the Chiefs were interested in bringing in a veteran, but that they didn't feel like they had to bring in a veteran.
Yeah, they still feel pretty comfortable with their starters. I think that's the ideal situation here. And all of the veteran players are rotational roles. Like they're bringing guys in and say, hey, you can come be a part of a, again, Super Bowl winning possible team, but you'll have to take a reduced role. And Zay Jones going over to the Cardinals, who only has Marvin Harrison Jr., makes a lot of sense because he's going to get a lot of playing time. He's going to get opportunities to catch the football a lot. So that makes sense. And for me, I'm taking Brett Veach at his word. He does, and the offensive staff really believes that Kadarius Toney has something to offer. So regardless of our opinions, what I would have done with that situation, he's going to be playing. I still think that we have Justin Watson slated. I should be slotted as a starter on the outside. And because Rashee Rice is going to miss time, I don't know how much. We'll find that out in the coming months. Don't hate me. This is my opinion. I would just use Sky Moore in the same role. That's what I would do. I would give him the football, not at the same clip, but in the same way, because that is the only way that he was going to be productive in the NFL anyway. That was his role. They just said, we're going to take Rashee Rice. And oh, by the way, Sky, you're going to be on the outside now, even though you're not good at it. And it was very painfully obvious he was not good on the outside. So that's what should happen, in my opinion. It's probably not what's going to happen. You're probably going to see Kadarius Toney in that role early on in the season. So I would imagine 1 through 4 with Justin Watson and Xavier Worthy, who's going to get a lot of run, I believe. I really believe it. And Hollywood Brown. I think that's how it's going to go.
You and I have been pretty much lockstep on Sky Moore, and I feel like we are one of the few people who believe this, and I apologize to the majority of Chiefs fans who are just annoyed with Sky and ready to move on and probably don't even hear us talk about him. But I do think he can be a useful slot receiver in the NFL. Now, useful does not mean great. Useful does not mean I think he's Rashee Rice. Useful does not mean he's a Pro Bowler. Useful means he's a guy who can come in right now and hold his own in the slot, a guy who is not a net negative on the field. How much of a positive? Maybe 0. It's almost like a replacement level player in baseball, right? What's his WAR? Yeah, he's fine. He's slashing 250, 310, 390, something like that, right? It's fine. He's fine. I think he could be that type of player, but you're right, and we've agreed. The Chiefs have not used him in his correct role. They tried him on the outside. That ain't him. He ain't going to win on the outside. It's abysmal out there. It's brutal. But put him in the slot, and he had a little success there his rookie season, then see what will happen. But that may have passed. The ship may have sailed, and they might, as you're mentioning, try and move on. I do think we're going to see way more Justin Watson than people are going to want to see early on in the season. I think Justin Watson will be the de facto wide receiver 2, which is going to piss off a lot of folk, myself included, when I see him maybe drop a ball, go for 80 snaps and have 1 reception or 2 targets. But at the end of the day, they're going to probably do the same thing with Xavier Worthy that they did with Rashee Rice. While we all clamored for Rashee Rice, looking back now, can't we all agree it was probably what was best for his development, for his career, and quite frankly, for the Chiefs? They allowed him to develop and learn at his pace. They didn't try and force feed him to learn everything at once. They didn't try and put a water hose and say, here, learn everything. No, they gave him a cup and said, here you go. Sippy cup week 1. We'll take the lid off week 4. Now week 8, here you go. It's a glass. It's glass, okay? So don't drop it. And then they just said he's good to go. But they eased him into that role. And I see the same thing happening with Xavier Worthy. We're all going to be irritated. We're all going to be upset, but do you see the same thing happening where it's going to be probably more Justin Watson than we would like to see before around week 8, week 10, all of a sudden Xavier Worthy takes the reins?
I think you have to just by default have Justin Watson on the field because he's the only big body guy you got. with Rashee Rice not there, you don't really have anybody to actually be a big body receiver. Now, I don't have any issues putting smaller players out there. I don't really think it's that big of a deal, especially if
Harms, what do you got against smaller body guys, huh? I'm 5'10".
I don't.
I'm 5'10", 170. For everyone listening, Harms is like 6'3". He's a big dude. What are you, 6'3", 6'4"? Hey, you're a big dude.
6'4". Yeah, I'm 6'4".
He's put together. So he hates the little guys. He hates the 5'10".
I just said that I have no problem with it. I'm a big proponent. You guys know, if you follow me, Xavier Worthy was my wide receiver 4 in this draft class. I love him. He's amazing. And I've been a big proponent of Hollywood Brown too. I don't see him being the speedster that he once was. The injuries have really taken a toll on him. But with Worthy, I don't really know what they're going to do because 2 years ago when they drafted Sky Moore, they said, hands off. We're going to just teach you everything and we'll have flashes and then we're going to ruin you next year. And then we have Rashee Rice, which we thought there's your X receiver, right? No, we're going to take you, put you in the slot. You're going to be a power slot, and we're going to slowly feed you the zone stuff. And so they're doing differently they're going about it differently. I'm hoping that Andy Reid is understanding that younger players coming into college kind of know a lot more about football. And I'm going to tell you right now that Xavier Worthy went to Texas specifically because of the way that Steve Sarkisian runs his offense. He got Devontae Smith ready for the NFL. Look at Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith's been great. Like, he's been basically uninjured. Like, he knows how to get these smaller players ready. And also, he dominated as a freshman at Texas.
Yeah.
Xavier Worthy was smacked on the field in Texas and just dominated. So you can give him a bit more, in my opinion, than you could give a Sky Moore coming out of Western Michigan or Rashee Rice coming out of SMU. They're different offenses. And because he was so successful early on, I think we might be able to see more out of Worthy as a rookie than we saw out of Rashee Rice early and Sky Moore his entire rookie season.
It's a great point, actually. Yeah, that's it. I agree. I didn't think of all of it that way, but you're right. I think Xavier Worthy is farther along in his process than even a Rashee Rice was coming out. Because again, Rashee Rice took a few years to really develop, while at least in college. While again, 18 years old, his breakout age for Xavier Worthy was 18.4, which is just absurd. Appreciate you, Doug in Kansas. Thank you for the super chat. Says Sterling and Dan, I'm liking it. Great show, guys. Thank you, Doug.
Appreciate you, Doug.
I'll be your Doug. Always appreciate you, man. All right, we talk wide receivers. I think that's about it for now. Until we get more with Rashee Rice, I don't want to speculate.
Yeah.
So we'll somewhat wait. I do want to talk about the running back room briefly here. Not a lot. They obviously brought back Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Obviously, Isaiah Pacheco, he's the guy, looking more or less like a 3-down back as of the roster construction right now. He improved as a pass protector last year. Don't know how you view him in the pass catching game. And then the third running back spot, do you have the rookie you brought from TCU? Do you go with Deneric Prince? Do you rock with Keontae Ingram, who they brought in from the Cardinals last year, who, again, I thought Keontae Ingram might be a little bit of a underrated name, a guy to at least keep an eye on, but I've heard nothing about him. Where do you land on the running back room in totality here?
It's a problem. It's not great. That's the reason that we've seen Jerick McKinnon back, because they don't really have somebody that can do the third down things, that can run the routes, that can track the ball over his head. Now, I say all this tongue in cheek because Clyde Edwards-Helaire has proven that he can catch the football out of the backfield, down the field as well. He can track the football, but they didn't use him in that role until this past season when he finally looked healthy and good things kind of happened, right? You saw him do some things that other running backs in Kansas City the last couple of seasons haven't done. Is that going to continue? I don't know. We're going to find out. But my big problem here is that while Pacheco has gotten better from a pass protection standpoint, he's essentially a only check down player. He cannot track the football. He can't really go down the field and catch it. And he's still going to lunge and miss in pass protection. So while, yes, he probably can handle some of those third down responsibilities, be a check down guy, we've seen him make guys miss. He also takes a long time to get that going, right? Like, he's not a quick cut guy. He's I'm going to fight through this and then get going again. Like, that's what he's been his entire career. So they have an issue on third down. Do they just say, Clyde, you're going to be our third down back this year? We're just moving forward. Or are they just going to bring back Jerick McKinnon when he's fully healthy and like they did last year during training camp? I don't know. But I can say with a grain of certainty that I think one of these UDFA running backs does have a chance if they don't bring back Jerick McKinnon. Carson Steele, you can do a lot of different things with in terms of he can be like an H-back, fullback, running back type of player, good in pass protection, physical player. You can use him on those short downs as well. He's not cut out for every down role, which is why he was UDFA. I think Imani Bailey might be like Isaiah Pacheco light in terms of he's got the same. He doesn't have the speed. He doesn't have the 4.3 speed, but he runs the same. He runs mad. He runs with those high legs, and I think he's a bit better in terms of quick twitch. I think he can make guys miss a little bit better in space than Isaiah Pacheco can. But holistically, there is a problem at running back outside of Pacheco, who still is not a 100% well-rounded running back. He has his own problems. So unless, again, they're going to bring back Jerick McKinnon and be able to use him as that third down back again, they're going to be doing some moving around and trying to figure some things out.
Yeah. Again, I'm still holding out some hope for Keontae Ingram, and not just because I have him in dynasty football in our league. Daniel, no chance. That's why. No chance. That's why I'm holding out.
No chance.
For
No
Keontae
chance.
Ingram. I am a little surprised that the Chiefs did not get Cody Schrader. And I know this is, again, I'm not trying to be a Mizzou homer here, but I did watch a lot of his film. He's never going to jump off as far as the athleticism, but he always produces, and he can do all three things. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He is a willing pass protector, and he always fights for the yards. I love Isaiah Pacheco with how physical he is, and already with a slight injury history. If he goes down, I don't know if I just want to hand the reins off to Clyde. Again, Clyde was fine last year, right? He was fine.
Yeah.
Not great. He's fine. I would have liked a Cody Schrader, a guy who can do a little bit of everything, who does seemingly always pick up those tough yards. Again, maybe I'm being biased here. I don't think I am. Again, he was the SEC best running back last year. I mean, that's pretty damn impressive. I just thought that may have been a stab as a UDFA that I would have liked to see, or even in the 7th round. But again, the Chiefs decided to go O-lineman in the 7th.
I was of the opinion, take one of your day 3 picks and draft a running back. I did believe they desperately needed, maybe not desperately needed it, but they needed somebody that has some makings of a third down back. Now, maybe they think that Carson Steele can be that, which, okay, fine. If they do, I understand that. That would be the replacement, again, for a guy like Jerick McKinnon. He's not going to be as fast, quick twitch, but he can give you what you want from a third down back. He can catch the football. He has soft hands. He's not a bad route runner. He's just big. So if that's the plan, I understand it. I just currently right now, there's a lot of ifs, ands, or buts. And I'm not a huge fan of all of the everything that we've seen from the injury perspective with Clyde and Isaiah. And then you have a bunch of unproven talent behind that, which we don't know of. And I'm not an Ingram guy myself. I never was coming out. And I think that's kind of why he's already on his second team as a pro, that just is going to be more of a practice squad guy. And I mean, a lot of people wanted Deneric Prince, and he didn't do anything last year. It's a tough situation to be in. And I know that Luis Rees-Zammit is there. Not an option as a running back in terms of third down player. He's not going to help you in any stretch of in any name of the word. So there's some things they need to do.
I'm still concerned on how he carries the rock. Dude carries it like a rugby still. He's working on it, but he's very, very upright. Yeah. And he carries it right here. Like, I get you're trying to get right here, get the point, get it tough. Yeah. But he has it like a rugby still, and he'll get there. Andy even said once he takes that first hit, he's going to change that running style pretty quick. So again, the athleticism is there. We'll see, but I'm excited to see him. I still don't see him as a running back. I see him as a returner more than anything else. Before we get to the offensive line, again, putting that off for the very end because I have a lot of fun doing that with you, and I know it'll take a little time. Leo Chenal is a player I've been talking about with a lot of guys right now because I'm intrigued by him. He's one of the more intriguing players. He's showed up really big in the postseason the past couple of years, and then his best 2 games of his NFL career have come in Super Bowls. But his role is a little unique. I don't know where he fits because, yes, Willie Gay Jr. is gone, right? Willie Gay Jr. signed that contract with the Saints, so you automatically think, all right, well, then Leo Chenal takes that role. Well, I do think Leo's snap count goes up a ton, and while Leo and Willie Gay Jr.'s athleticism score are both insane, they're both absolutely athletic freaks, right? They're very different players. Leo's a guy that gets downhill. He's going to get after the quarterback, can be decent in the run stuffing game, actually phenomenal in the run stuffing game, while Willie Gay Jr.'s strength was in pass coverage. That's not Leo's strength. So while it's, yes, athletic linebacker, 1-for-1, it really isn't like that. How do you see Leo Chenal making an impact in this upcoming season?
It's a tough question because I don't think his role is going to change much at all. I think it's going to stay the exact same and be what he is. He's basically like how Steve Spagnuolo uses safeties. He puts him out there in a bunch of different roles, and he's a Swiss Army knife for the second level and first level, because he will line up also as that overhang defender or as a defensive end at times. They bring him out with down linemen and 3 linebackers, and they put him on the line of scrimmage, and they ask him to be a little bit defensive end, a little bit of linebacker. So I don't think his role's changing because, like you said, he cannot really move sideline to sideline and stop on a dime and get going downhill. He is I'm going downhill, but I don't change direction very well. I think he's gotten better, and he's getting better in coverage and finding his spots, but he's still not a guy that you're going to say, hey, go spy Josh Allen. Like Willie Gay could spy Josh Allen because he could stop and move with him. That's not something I want to see out of Leo Chenal, as much as I love his rampant energy.
I'll go Lamar. Josh Allen needs a better chance. Lamar, I don't know.
Either one, to be honest with you. They both change direction very, very good. And Josh, for his size, is an insanely gifted runner. So just in terms of change of direction skills, he doesn't offer that. So I think we're going to see some different usage out of some other linebackers. I think Cam Jones is going to play a little bit of that Willie Gay role. I also personally think that they're going to take the safety out of Washington State a little bit, Jaden Hicks, and maybe line him up at that Willie Gay role, because he's 6'2", 215 pounds. He has a little bit more that he offers, and he stands up in the run game. Like, he's not somebody that is a safety that you put him in the box, he's a liability. I think I made this likening of him to in my film breakdown. I think he can be Dan Sorensen plus. Because Dan Sorensen was often used as a dime backer, comes down and is a linebacker because he was a bigger player. Hicks is bigger. He's better against the run. He's better holding up against actual offensive linemen. He can actually stack and shed a bit better too. He's got good change of direction skills. So I think they might use him a little bit, maybe not till later in the season. But it's hard to really predict what Leo Chenal's role is going to be without Willie Gay, because I think it's going to stay the same. And that's not a bad thing. I think last year was perfect usage for him. An excellent base linebacker that you can move around on the defensive line, play a little bit of Mike as well, because I think that would, out of the 3 linebacker spots, I think Sam and Mike are the 2 ones that he's going to play. You don't really want him as a will, because that weak side linebacker, the guy who's supposed to be able to move around and go sideline to sideline, is not his strength. So I love what he offers, and I think that he's going to still be that player. The rest of the room is kind of interesting to me.
Yeah. I did see an interesting little article on ESPN today. Bill Barnwell saying that Jamal Adams might be a fit for Kansas City. Originally, I was just, no, it's stupid. And then I got into what he was talking about. It'd be a very cheap deal, incentive laden. It would actually be more of a roster incentive per game basis even. And he even said that Jamal Adams might not even make this roster. But he did say Jamal Adams with Steve Spagnuolo would be an absolute joy and a treat to watch. And if anyone could unlock Jamal Adams' talent and potential, now at this point, it wouldn't be the same as what it once was, but that would be fun. I did think that when he actually broke down the article in more detail, I found myself saying, you know what? I get what he's saying. That could be intriguing. So how they're using Jaden Hicks would be basically how they would use Jamal Adams. Exactly. Again, a bigger bodied safety. All right. Offensive line talk, baby. Let's get into the O-line. Let's start with right tackle, okay? For those of you that don't know, Daniel and I, we talk all the time, and one of our favorite things to talk about is the offensive line, because we think those big dudes up front, they don't give enough love. They need more love.
They need
it. Okay? Big dudes need love too. Wait, pause. Phrasing. All right, Juwan Taylor, right tackle. Does he improve vastly this upcoming season after last year's, most of the time, again, happening in the first half, but I think by all accounts was a vast disappointment?
Yeah, I think the biggest disappointment for him was the penalties. I don't think necessarily he was a bad right tackle. I think he was good, a good player with some ups and downs. I think his second year in the system is going to help him. For me, it's about consistency. Be consistent. There were games where he was dominant. Like, he dominated Aiden Hutchinson in that opening game against the Lions. He shut him down, basically. That's the kind of player that they need to have the entire season. That's the player that they expected him to turn into. Again, that signed a 4-year contract, a very level salary. They expected him to be on this roster for 4 years and progressively get better in the system. I think this year is going to be a better, consistent year for him. It's going to be more about improving that level of strength, because I didn't think he had it in him to beat Aiden Hutchinson from a power perspective, but he did hold up against him there. So that's going to be an area where he's going to have to be consistent, in my opinion, and be able to be that type of player for the season. And the penalty stuff has to get cleaned. It has to get cleaned up. If you don't, you're basically, I think the Chiefs might just cut ties, because at what point is it not so drastically a problem that all you're doing is setting the offense back? I have different perspectives on defensive players and penalties than I do on offensive linemen. Yeah. I have no problems taking a holding penalty or a defensive pass interference every now and then. I have no issues with it. But if you have an offensive lineman who is, again, timing his snap on purpose, it's on purpose, and you're consistently getting called regardless of how the referees are watching you. If you know they're watching you, you probably shouldn't be doing what you're doing. Let's be honest here. You probably shouldn't be doing it. So if it's consistently an issue this year, that's where I'm going to be, okay, it's not going to get better. He is not going to fix it because this is year 2 and he didn't do it this past year. So from a play perspective, I think he's going to be good. I am concerned about the penalties.
Okay. Yeah, you're correct, though. When L'Jarius Sneed got penalties, it was most of the time you're like, yeah, I understand that, because 98% of the time, the physicality is going to work. It's going to win. You're not crushing your team. Offensive penalty, especially in the first half of last year with the offense, the way it was struggling, it felt like it was an insurmountable object to overcome. We'll go right guard and center combined here. Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith. One, does Creed Humphrey get his snaps figured out? And 2, which one of those guys, both or neither, are back the following season? Because this is a real big year for both Creed and Trey. It's okay. The guard market exploded this past year. Trey Smith, you've proven you can stay healthy. Again, who knows with the heart stuff and everything that went on of why he fell to the 6. But now at this point, I think every team's looking around going, okay, this guy's an absolute stud. He's a badass. You're looking at guards getting $20 million a year. It's going to be tough to keep both. So both are kind of on a contract year to an extent, right? So contract year is undefeated. Expect good performance from both here. Where do you land on Creed and Trey?
So I think we understand, at least to an extent, that Creed had a hand injury last year. At least it's been made known from one of the trainers that worked with him last year that he was dealing with a hand injury. So while we have noticed some low snaps on a season-to-season basis, last year was worse by a large margin. So I expect them to be better this year, and that shouldn't be an issue, especially with all the attention it got. I think that he's the kind of player that's okay. We'll fix this kind of stuff, and he's that kind of player. So I'm not worried about that. The contract stuff with both him and Trey Smith is where it gets interesting. Like you mentioned, Robert Hunt getting that massive deal from the Carolina Panthers, in my opinion, ruined any chance that the Chiefs were going to sign Trey Smith. Ruin any chance. Because and from the perspective of, I think that Trey Smith is a good player, not a great player. I think he's up and down large parts. He can give you a lot of really good snaps. He can also just kind of get put in the dirt. He still is a very top-heavy, balanced, inefficient player. He's on the ground a lot. He can get pushed, pulled, and be moved out of the way too easily at times.
Yeah, Breeland Speaks is never on the ground. Never on the ground.
Ever. But he is when he recovers fumbles, right? He's on the ground when he recovers those fumbles. Then he waves to the camera. But that's something that is very interesting to me, because like you said, it's contract year, and I believe Trey Smith's going to play extremely well this year. I do believe he's going to be ready and looking for that type of contract, because not only do you need to have that contract year to show everyone that I deserve this, everyone's already expecting kind of that from him, right? So I do think it's going to be really tough to keep him and Creed Humphrey. The thing for me that makes it easier for the Chiefs is that they've already drafted somebody that can take over, in my opinion. Hunter Norzad played center for Penn State last year, but he's played right tackle, left guard, right guard, and center. He's played all 4 of those positions. So, in theory, you could have him play center or guard.
Yeah.
Now, the thing that I've floated around is maybe they extend Creed on a center contract and come to him and say, hey, How would you feel about playing guard next
So-
year after they extend him?
So I thought this too, Harms, and the more I thought about it, I go, you would have to be. That's a real AH move right there.
Yeah.
If you sign Creed Humphrey, because for those listening, center market is not quite as robust as guards. Guards typically get paid more than centers. So if you paid him as a center and then moved him to guard, well, he'd be losing out on a good amount of money. That's why, in theory, you're like, oh yeah, why wouldn't you do that? And you go, well, it's you free agents would obviously understand what teams are doing and be privy to that. It's why, certain at the time edge rushers came to the edge rusher position in free agency because it was defensive end versus outside linebacker. Those guys were getting paid different. It was a different market. And then eventually they came together, D tackle versus defensive end. Chris Jones tried to have that whole conversation, right? Eventually he got paid as an outlier because he's that freaking good. But defensive ends were getting paid more than defensive tackles. So it was kind of a back and forth. But that's why, again, Harms, you and I had the same conclusion here, but it kind of was for me at least, I don't think the Chiefs would do that.
It would have to be more of an understanding, right? They would increase his salary, but it wouldn't be a guard. It's like, I'm not saying that I would do this because I think you're also negatively impacting two positions. Yeah. Possibly. I still think Creed Humphrey could play guard at an all-pro level. I think he could do it. I have no issues with that. But you're also taking Norzad and saying, can you play to a Pro Bowl level at center in the NFL? Which I don't know. We don't really know. I know that he could probably be a Nick Allegretti type player at guard. And how'd that work out for the Chiefs last year? Oh, he stepped in for Joe Thuney and helped them win a Super Bowl. I think that's the kind of player that they're looking for. And so it's tough because you always want to extend homegrown players. You always want to. The reality of the situation is that you have to pick and choose. Creed Humphrey, even though they have a history of not extending centers, is going to be the exception to the rule, in my opinion. I think they're going to keep him and extend him and keep a good faith agreement that we're going to give you probably top of the center market, close to that maybe guard type of market because he is that good, and say, Trey, we love you, love everything you did. Go get paid because you're going to get paid. And we just can't do that. So I think it's going to be Creed in Kansas City, and Trey Smith earns a contract somewhere else.
Yeah, it's wild. I don't have you on the show to agree with you. That's not typically my MO. I like to argue.
No, I know. We do like to argue.
I love to argue, but I can't disagree there. We can gloss over Joe Thuney very quickly because I think we're all fairly on the same page. If he's back and he's healthy, he's going to be all pro. What the future holds for him, I think, remains to be seen. His contract's no longer as crazy as we once thought. Age is seemingly not a factor for the cyborg that is Joe Thuney. I actually wouldn't even be surprised if he ended up getting extended to move the contract hit down and he's still here 2 years from now.
Yeah, that's the thing. If he's healthy, I think he's getting extended. I really do, because we've seen that the Chiefs don't really care about the premium on offensive line for the most part. If it's an all-pro type of player, they're fine paying that. And yes, they made an overpay on Juwan Taylor because he's not an all-pro player. And I think that's the differentiating factor that's going to make Trey Smith be not re-signed, because they want those type of players, those guys that can maybe reach that all-pro status. They believed that Juwan Taylor has that room to grow. We have yet to really see that. So you're going to get some misses on that point. But to Joe Thuney's, to Joe Thuney's point, if he's healthy, I do think he's going to get extended.
Okay. Left tackle now, the fun one. This is the intriguing one, the interesting one, the what the bleep is going to happen one. Kingsley Suamataio drafted in the second round, obviously drafted for upside, but that dude is a rookie. I think a lot of folks had him as a end of the first round, early second rounder, and he fell all the way to Kansas City. Chiefs absolutely love that. I thought the Chiefs might draft him at 32, so I was thrilled with that draft pick. Still, I don't know if that's going to be the starter week one. Wanya Morris started last year. He started multiple games. I thought he was fine. Yes, the lows were really bad. But I think as a rookie left tackle, the lows are always going to be bad. I always bring up Andrew Thomas, and I know people are sick of me talking about this, but even if you're drafted in the top 5 or top 10 as an offensive tackle, your rookie season is almost always really, really bad. But what happens year 2 and on? You get better. I don't get why we act like tackles are all of a sudden finished products when I believe in my heart of hearts, tackle might be the toughest position to translate from college to the NFL. You may in college go up against one NFL caliber player, maybe two every now and then. NFL is every damn week, and every single team has two of these guys who are all phenomenal because the focus now in the NFL is on edge rushers. So I'm just sitting here going, why do we act like what Wanye was last year, that the lows are now going to be the constant? No, the lows to me are going to get washed away while the average play and the upside will now be the norm. So I think Wanye Morris to me is my tab for starting left tackle early on. Maybe Kingsley gets an opportunity at some time. Either way, I feel pretty comfortable with whoever wins that job actually earning that job. If they bring in Donovan Smith, which I see, Doug saying, will they bring back D. Smith back? If they bring back Donovan Smith, I think things have seriously gone wrong. If they bring back Donovan Smith, that means Kingsley Suamataia and Wanye Morris have both been bad. Quite frankly, they would have to be bad. If they're both not showing anything and Donovan Smith comes back, that's what I believe is the meaning behind it.
So I'm going to disagree with you because I think bringing Donovan Smith back means that you have Wanya Morris as your backup right tackle. Because we also forget he played right tackle at Oklahoma. He wasn't a left tackle. So not only did he get drafted in the
because they had, what's his name? They had Anton.
Yeah, they had Anton Harrison, but that's my
yes.
point. He's learning a new position last year.
But he played left tackle at Tennessee. It's not like he didn't play left tackle. He played left tackle in the SEC.
You're still going from left 1 year to right 1 year to left the other year. Like It's not just going to be easy to pick it up. I also think it makes more sense to bring Donovan Smith back and then have 4 tackles, swing tackles as well. Give actual depth, not just play it safe or not just go into a season with 2 young players and Jawan Taylor at tackle, because we know Lucas Niang is not it. He's not doing it for you. He's probably not making this roster. So in my opinion, I think it makes more sense because you know that he doesn't have to go through the OTA period. He doesn't need any of this stuff. Get him ready for training camp. Like, just be here for training camp. You be depth. We're going to sign you for another low cost contract, and you're going to back up one of these guys that ends up winning left tackle. The other one will become the backup. So for me, I think that it's going to be a very fun camp battle, no matter if they bring a veteran in or not. And it's going to be Kingsley or Wanya Morris. I am going to lean with Kingsley because of his pass protection. If Wanya Morris as a pass protector gets better and actually makes the battle more leaning on pass protection, I think the better pass protector will win the left tackle spot. So if Kingsley comes in and he's already a better pass protector than Wanya Morris is, then I think he's going to win the job. Because at the end of the day, I think they can say, all right, as a run blocker, Wanya Morris is clearly better. I think that's already obvious.
Badass.
But are we going to be okay maybe sacrificing a little bit in the run game if it means Patrick's more protected on the left side? Yeah, I think the answer to that question is yes. And I think that's why, in my mind, Kingsley will be the starting left tackle. But again, maybe Wanya got a lot better.
Yeah.
We got to wait and see.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I will say this is one of the issues I have with PFF. Again, I think PFF a lot of times does a good job, or at least a solid enough job. They're a good jumping off point, not the end all be all. Yeah. But some of my concerns, again, with them, I think this is a great example, is Wanya Morris, I believe, did not grade up very well in run blocking, which I think every single Chiefs fan, Chiefs media all understood. This guy is a stud in run blocking. Yeah. And I believe he actually graded out higher than Donovan Smith overall in PFF last year. And even I, who loves Wanya Morris, could not get behind that. I thought Donovan Smith was fine last year. Again, I don't think he's a bad player. This is not a knock on Donovan Smith. I just think at some point it's time for the Chiefs to rip the Band-Aid off and say, hey, it's now your job. Go ahead and take it. Go run with it. You're now the future left tackle. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe neither of those guys are the answer, but I think they need an opportunity. I know people always say, well, they've never done it before in the NFL level. Well, yeah, you've never done something until you actually do it. Same thing with Donovan Smith. He had never done it until he got the opportunity to do it. Again, if Donovan Smith comes back, I think that's bad news. But again, I will understand if it's just for a depth piece and the understanding is he's the backup. Mm-hmm. If that's the case, then I am fine with it. But I guess I'm in the camp of I'm ready to pull the Band-Aid off and try and find a long-term solution. Again, Suamataia, love the draft pick. Wanya Morris, that was my favorite draft pick, I believe, of last year when that draft happened. Again, I love me the O-line. I think trenches are very, very important, and the Chiefs have done a nice job, and they've done it unconventionally. They've actually built it more with the interior than the tackles, which is a little unconventional in today's NFL. Look around the NFL, look at the teams who are playing late into the year, look at the trenches. That's what got it done in the playoffs. Miami, bad O-line. What happened? They collapsed. Bills, not a great O-line. What happened? They collapsed. Ravens had a great offensive line, and they made it. I don't want to say great. They had a good offensive line and made it there. Chiefs had a better offensive line. 49ers have a good offensive line. They were a little banged up, so I think that was a little tough. But Detroit, great offensive line. Houston, solid offensive line. I think people don't talk enough about the big boys up front, which is why, Harms, I love having you on to do this.
Exactly, man. And I think that's what we've seen, that they really do need to get the tackle spot figured out. They've got the interior figured out. They have a plan for that, but they've been kind of throwing darts at tackle position outside of Fisher and Mitchell Schwartz. They kind of try to finally figure it out. They need to get these guys nailed down. And that's why we saw Kingsley get drafted. They were trying to move up into the 50s to get him. Like, they wanted to get him. And the fact that we both were like, maybe you have to take him at 32, shows you just kind of how dire it was for them.
Yeah. Harms, always appreciate it, man. Make sure everyone follows him on Twitter, or the X, should I say, at In Harm's Way 19. Phenomenal stuff on there. RGR football. What all you have coming up right now? What all's cooking in Harm's world?
There's a lot of stuff that I'm cooking up, but tomorrow on RGR football, we have a Shamari Connor breakdown that we'll be dropping, going through his rookie season and getting him kind of figured out why, he started to play better and all that kind of stuff, and what he does well, what he still needs to work on. And I think that's always something to look forward to. But yeah, I'm starting to do more actual draft content too. So I'm looking at 2025 prospects. Like, I am deep in the woods, guys. We are deep in the woods, but every week,
fuck that.
every week on RGR, we're from now until training camp, we are going to have some player breakdowns, some concept breakdowns, talking about how this offense maybe gets better, the defense, what we're going to see going forward. So yeah, it's going to be fun.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not looking ahead to the 2025 NFL draft. That just gave me, I was like, no, I'm not doing that. But if you guys care about that, which again, you probably should, because it's interesting and it's fun. Harms is your guy. If you want someone who's on it first, it is Daniel Harms. Harms, always appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for hanging out, listening with us. Make sure to like this channel. Make sure to like and subscribe as well. If you want to leave us a review on Apple Pod or wherever you get your podcast, I do really appreciate it. We'll start reading those more and more. Until next time, I'll be back tomorrow with Adam Best. Until then, we are out.